Merry Mead. We are working on a psalm spell today, and today we are working on Psalm 74. For us today, we are using one of the traditional uses, which is to attract good fortune. That's right, we're going to use Psalm 74 in a spell to attract good fortune. How much fun is that? Okay, so the way we do this is very simple if you're new here. We take the psalm and we read it all the way through once without stopping, and that's called an incantation. We do that out loud. And then we go back through the same psalm and we take it one little verse at a time, sometimes even a line by a time. I've even been known to take it one word at a time, and we find those hidden meanings that are deep within the psalm. And through that searching and digging, finding and contemplating, we are taking those magical thought seeds which are already in psalms, and there are infinite amounts of them, and they are very magical, and we are quite literally planting those seeds deep within our mind, and our mind is a very fertile ground. And then those seeds begin to take root, and they grow, and they bear fruit after their kind. And that's how these psalm spells work, and they're very effective. Remember that psalm magic is a type of a reconditioning magic, and that means that we recommend that you come back to the psalm that you're working on again and again and again to keep planting those seeds so that you get a nice crop of results. So here we go with Psalm 74. O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Remember thy congregation which thou hast purchased of old, the rod of thine inheritance which thou hast redeemed, this Mount Zion wherein thou hast dwelt. Lift up thy feet into the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. They set up their ensigns for signs. A man was famous according as he had lifted up axes upon the thick trees. But now they break down the carved work thereof at once with axes and hammers. They have cast fire into thy sanctuary. They have defiled by casting down thy dwelling place of thy name to the ground. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them together. They have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land. We see not our signs. There is no more any prophet, neither is there any among us that knoweth how long. O God, how long shall the adversary reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? Thy withdrawest thou hand, even thy right hand. Pluck it out of thy bosom. For God is my King of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. Thou breakest the heads of the Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Thou didst cleave the fountain and the flood. Thou didst driest up many rivers. The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. Remember this, that the enemy hath reproached, O Lord, and that the foolish people have blasphemed thy name. O deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove into the multitude of the wicked. Forget not the congregation of thy poor forever. Have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. O let not the oppressed return ashamed. Let the poor and needy praise thy name. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproacheth thee daily. Forget not the voice of thine enemies. The tumult of those that rise up against thee increaseth continually. All right, so now we just take those verses one at a time and work the magic. So we're starting out with, O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Okay, so we're addressing the God of the Psalms. When we're dealing with psalmic magic, we have to remember that that means the top of the tree of life, that pre-gender experience of the life principle itself. It is one power, one source, one substance, one force. There is nothing to thwart it. There is nothing to oppose it. O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Okay, so We know how that feels, right? When things are less than fortunate for us, we feel like, what did I do? Why is God, just to be clear, when I say God, in general, when I say God, I'm talking about the pregender form of God that we just described. When I say the Father, I'm talking about the God. And when I say the Mother, I'm talking about the Goddess. So when I say God, please understand that I'm talking about the Godhead. All right. So how many times have we thought that? Oh God, why am I going through this? Why are you turning your back on me? What did I do? What did I do? So we know what that feels like. Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Because remember, in Psalm 23, we are just like a little flock, and the Lord just takes care of us, and everything is good, and all of our needs are met. And then when things don't turn out so well, rather than looking at our own thought forms and looking within our own minds and figuring out what we're doing with our minds that's causing this, we say, why are you being so mean to me? I'm nothing but a sheep, and you're just destroying me, and you're just forgetting me, and you're so mad at me. And that's called projection. That's when we project things onto God that don't belong to God. They belong to us. Remember thy congregation, which thou hast purchased of old. Okay, when God purchased the congregation, all that means is that when we are in the midst of calamity, when we are in the midst of problems, God, quote, can save us from that because God sees the truth of it. God sees only the truth. God doesn't understand our illusions, because if God understood illusions, then God would be prone to illusions, right? So God doesn't understand that which is not understandable. However, God is aware that we are in distress. And so because God's aware that we are in distress and God has nothing for us but perfect love, then God, quote, purchased us from those problems, in that God can always return us to where we need to be. The rod of thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed, this Mount Zion, wherein thou hast dwelt. So the rod of thine inheritance, and which thou hast redeemed, is the Mount Zion, and that is the place that is the most exalted part of who we are. The most exalted part of who we are is where the redemption comes from. Is where we trade the unfortunate circumstances with fortunate circumstances. That's where that law of substitution comes into play. It happens in the most exalted parts of who we are, and that's symbolized by the mountain called Zion in the Psalms. Lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. Okay, so what are the feet of God? What are the feet of God? The feet of God are God's understanding of us. So to lift up the feet means to lift up the understanding. So all of our perpetual desolations, all of the things that are unfortunate that we want deliverance from, we are asking that God's understanding come and lift us out of that. Now, the understanding is also a part of the tree of life. That's the goddess force on sphere number 3. And so in a way, we could also say, lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations is the same way that we use the rosary, that we're calling on that divine mother as well, that you can see it that way as well. Even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. So now, who's the enemy? Is it some person out there? Is it some group of people? No, it's enemy thought forms. It's errant thoughts that we've allowed to fester and we've allowed to take over, and we have not taken care and taken control of our minds. And so what those enemy thought forms do is they roar. They do wicked things in the sanctuary. They defile the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. They set up their ensigns for signs. Okay, so when an enemy roars in the midst of the congregation, what does that mean? That you know how that is when you could have a million great things happen to you today, and one person says something bad to you, and that roaring is all you hear. That's it. That's all you even know. So they set up their ensigns for signs. So they claim this. You know how an ensign, like when they stuck a flag in the moon. You know, we're claiming this on behalf of the moon, on behalf of the United States. Well, then we allow those errant thought forms to just claim us in the name of themselves. You know, and they defile our sanctuary, and we allow it to happen. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. They set up their ensigns for signs. A man was famous according as he had lifted up axes upon the thick trees. Okay, so let me just, this next one, it helps with that one. But now they break down the carved work thereof at once with axes and hammers. So the creative parts of us who are famous for being for doing such great works, also we have the same, we encase these thought forms which destroy the very good that we do. So of course we feel unfortunate. Of course we have misfortune. They have cast fire into thy sanctuary. They have defiled by casting down the dwelling place of thy name to the ground. So these errant thought forms, they have nothing but destruction in their wake. That's what they are programmed to do. They are programmed to burn down the sanctuary. Well, I'm going to keep going because it's going to show you the resolution there in a second. I don't have to give away the end of the story here. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them together. They have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land. Now, you know what that's like, right? Once it's like as soon as one bad thing happens, then the next, and the next, and the next, and it all just snowballs. And it's like, what, you know, is anything good ever going to happen now? Because it's just like this big old wildfire through the sanctuary of God, right? And so that's the power of expansion. Our mind is expansive by nature, whether it's for good or for ill. We see not their signs. We see not our signs. There is no more any prophet, neither is there any among us. Neither is there among us any that knoweth how long. Okay, so when you say we don't see signs, we don't have prophets, I can't foretell the future, nobody knows what's happening, what's that from? That's from listening to the wrong voice in our minds. That's from being hypnotized by all of these external experiences that we are labeling as misfortunate. And we are, remember at the beginning we started out by blaming God for this. And now we are recognizing that actually when this train leaves the station, it's really hard to stop it. It's really hard to turn the stuff around, and it self-perpetuates over and over and over again. And we feel like we have no way of even navigating, because we don't even have signs. We have no prophet. We don't even know how long this is going to last. Oh God, how long shall the adversary reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? You know what that feels like. This is going to go on forever. There's no end in sight. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Why withdrawest thou thy hand, even thy right hand? Pluck it out of thy bosom. Well, this is our problem. We're blaming God for the way we are using our minds. We are blaming God for the way we are using our talents, our abilities, our powers. And God only wants us to be freed from these things, but God can't go against our free will. So what do? We dig ourselves into the illusion even more by misusing our minds and then saying, oh, it's happening to us. It must be God. God's not even helping us. Where is this? For God is my King of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. Ha! There's always that turning point in these Psalms, right? It's like, okay, wait a minute. I forgot. God's not the problem. God's the answer. God's not the problem. God's the solution. God is my King of old. God's been there since the beginning. Working salvation in the midst of the earth, always making. What is salvation? What is salvation? It's the solving of your problem. It's creating fortune where there was misfortune. That's the salvation. It's the law of substitution. So, if you're hungry, a burrito might be your salvation, might be your savior. If you're in prison, a pardon might be your salvation. If you're, cold, a sweater might be your salvation, right? So it's the solving of your problems. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. Okay, now they're specifically referring back to specific stories within the scriptures here, but it's important to understand that outside of that, you can remember many times in your life where you felt like you were up against it, and God came through for you because you allowed yourself to ask for help. You allowed yourself to be aligned with the powers of redemption, with the powers of salvation, with the powers of correction. You know that it's possible because you've had it done before again and again and again. There's been times that miraculous things have happened for you, and we shut ourselves off from those memories because we get so committed to these problems. We have this real bizarre sort of it's sick love for our problems. We fall in love with our resentments. We fall in love with it. And it's very sick. And it's wonderful when we recognize that, because then we can ask to be lifted out of that. Thou breakest the heads of the Leviathan. Thou breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Okay, so Leviathan is a monster in the sea. So the sea represents your unconscious mind. The monster is that those unconscious fears, those unconscious terrors that seem to just come out of nowhere. All kinds of problems, all kinds of many tentacled issues that just seem unsolvable. Well, he has the power, meaning God, meaning he, she, it, they, has the power to not only break that into pieces, but turn it into nourishment for you. Turn it into something good. Transform it. There again, the law of substitution. Thou didst cleave to the fountain and the flood. Thou driedest up mighty rivers. So whatever the problem is, even though it seems like it's moving in every direction and there's no way away from it, because it's like the floods, it's like waters that there's no place that it won't hit. Well, God will just dry it up because he did in the past. And anytime you put something in the past tense, it's a magical technique to make it so in the present. The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun. Okay, so we're not saying the day is better than the night here. Those are symbols. We're saying that the day is the time when you can see clearly, that when there is light for you to see, where there is sun for you to see, sun for you to grow, right? And so that is the day is thine, meaning my ability to navigate, to see clearly, comes from that power, comes from that source, comes from the one force of the universe. Without that force, I'm all on my own. All on my own means I'm confused and I don't know where to go, and I'm playing in the dark, and there's nothing I can do except for tread water at best. But if I recognize who my source is, if I recognize who I am in relationship to my source, there is nothing but light and guidance, and there is no mistake, there is no error. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. And remember that when we're saying borders and summer and winter, God has laws. God has ways. God has means. God has all law. It comes from God. So there's nothing arbitrary. There's nothing capricious. You don't need to beg. You don't need to plead. It all is part of the law. And if you align yourself with the laws of God will take over, and you won't have anything to worry about. You'll have nothing but good fortune. Remember this, that the enemy hath reproached, O Lord, and that the foolish people have blasphemed thy name. Well, who is the enemy and who are the foolish people? The enemy is your own need to separate, your own need to be by yourself, your own need to think separately from God, your own need to do your own thing your own way. And then you go, but now I'm scared. Everything bad is happening. Oh, what's happening to me? God must hate me. That's the enemy. You see how that's sort of a cyclical, insane thinking, right? So instead of thinking that way, So we're confessing this in a way to God, that the foolish people has blasphemed thy name. How do you blaspheme the name of God? Well, the name of God means the nature of God. It doesn't mean saying God damn. Okay, that's probably not the best thing to say, just because you want to be clear about your words. You want to be clean with your words, but that's not truly the worst way that you can blaspheme the name of God. The way you blaspheme the name of God, the name of something is its nature in the Psalms. So anytime that you're not thinking with perfect love, you're blaspheming God. Anytime that you are not thinking along the terms of infinite life, you are blaspheming God. Anytime that you are not thinking along the lines of your soul's purpose here and going something separate than your soul's purpose, you are blaspheming God. Anytime you are thinking opposite of the nature of God, all of those qualities of God, that's blasphemy. It's not that it's a sin that you're going to be punished for. It's that you are putting yourself in hot water and then complaining that it's burning. You're putting your hands over your eyes and complaining that it's dark. That's all. It's not that somebody's going to punish you. It's that it is itself its own punishment, and that you're doing it to yourself, and then you're pretending that it's not happening. That you're pretending that it's happening to you. O deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove unto the multitude of the wicked. Forget not the congregation of thy poor forever. Okay, so now remember that this is us coming back to remembering God, but we're doing it as if God's remembering us. God never forgot you. God doesn't forget. Can you imagine if God has the capability of forgetting? Whole worlds would just disappear at random and reappear again when God happened to remember it again. Right? Your hand would disappear and then it would reappear because God forgot. Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh yeah, you have a hand. That wouldn't work. So God doesn't forget you. You forget God. So God never delivered the soul of the turtle dove unto the multitude of the wicked. We did that, and then we blamed it on God. So now that we're saying, God, please remember us and don't do that again, it's us telling ourselves we're not going to do that again. Have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. Okay, so what's the covenant? The covenant is the agreement that we have. Now, there's covenants in the Bible that religious people will attribute this to, but we're thinking magically. The true covenant, the one covenant that we have, is the agreement that we have with God, that God is here for us and we are here for God. Okay? That God is here to forgive us as we are here to forgive others. God is here to prosper us as we are here to prosper others. God is here to give all to us as we are here to give all to others. So that's the covenant. What we give is what we receive. So have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. So if the dark places of the earth are full of habitations of cruelty, it's probable that you have not been giving more love than cruelty. You have probably been you have probably been resenting in private and in secrecy, instead of using your mind to forgive and release. So don't be surprised at how things work for you when that happens. But now we're asking to be delivered from that, and we are asking to be given a fortunate outcome. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproacheth thee daily. We are asking for these thought forms basically to get shined away. Now arise, O God, like God was sleeping. Like God was just sleeping on the job. No, arise, O God, plead thine own case. Plead thine own cause. Well, God doesn't need to plead for himself. God's not on trial. But we, this is kind of a poetic gesture. But remember that a lot of times that these psalms are just showing us our silliness about how we put ourselves in wrong relationship to God. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproacheth thee daily. We are asking that the foolish man within us be dissolved, be destroyed. Because it's not who we really are. It's a construct that we have created on our own, by ourselves, in the dark, not under the light of day. as was described earlier. So everything that it was been done in private, everything that is not along the lines of who we are as a soul, everything that is not within that covenant that we described earlier, we are asking for that to be destroyed. And that's just simply inherent in that, "O God, plead thine own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproacheth thee daily." So everything that we do to reproach those qualities of God, we are asking for them to be removed. "Forget not the voice of thine enemies. The tumult of those that rise up against thee increaseth continually." Okay, so we are recognizing the expansive quality of our minds, and that without us doing something to stop it, these things are just going to get continuously worse and worse and worse. Sort of like if you don't call the exterminator, those mice are going to have babies, and you're going to have an infestation of mice. And there's just nothing you can do about that until you take care of it. And that's what we're doing here. We are taking care of all of those thoughts that continually perpetuate and continually grow and multiply, that are causing us misfortune. And as a result, we are turning our entire lives around so that we now have fortunate circumstances to take their place. All right, well, this is how you do that. I'm so happy that we were able to work this psalm together. I hope you enjoyed that. I cannot wait to work with you again. And until that time, blessed be.